Let's look forward to 2024 and the PS5 Pro.
Snake, are you okay? Snake?
How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and this is my channel PSReady, where I talk about everything PlayStation. So we're coming to the end of the year right now. It has been a crazy year for PlayStation, between stuff like Spider-Man 2 being one of the biggest games ever, despite losing Game of the Year at the Game Awards, which I know is making people upset. I don't really have a dog in the race. Spider-Man 2 was definitely not my favorite game this year. Alan Wake 2 was like by far my favorite game, and I didn't play enough Baldur's Gate 3 to really have an opinion there, but I understand why people are upset there. And then from a hardware perspective, we had stuff like the PlayStation Portal and the new Pulse Explorer headset. I will never forget when I got off the plane at LAX. That's funny. I'll never forget when I had to record a video about the PlayStation Portal being announced in an LAX bathroom, and then halfway through I looked over and just saw a big old pile of right on the floor in the bathroom. It's a fun memory. But yeah, looking forward to 2024, the thing I want to talk about is the PlayStation 5 Pro, because we have gotten so many leaks, so many rumors, and now we even have things like full spec leaks coming out about the PS5 Pro that basically lines up exactly what Sony's philosophy with this machine is. These specs have leaked all over the place, and they've leaked multiple times. Ironically, they haven't really changed all that much. I just want to say, take them with a huge grain of salt, because A, they could change by the time the developers get their hands on the dev unit or this thing comes out, and B, Tom Henderson replied to these stats and said he can't confirm them because they're not his own leaks. So again, take them with a grain of salt. Just based on what I know personally, they seem pretty believable, at least from a top level. Like, some of the nitty-gritty data might change, but as for what the console is going for, this seems pretty accurate to me. I'm not going to go through all the bullet point numbers here because honestly they don't really matter all that much. All you need to know is that the increase in performance across the board on this thing is going to put it at least 50 to 60% ahead of what we have in the current PlayStation 5, whether you're talking about the PS5 or the PS5 Slim. Because despite the fact that the PS5 Slim runs a little bit more efficiently, the raw power output is exactly the same, and they run games identically. I saw some headlines going around with this info saying that this is going to be the most powerful console ever. It's going to be an absolute beast, and like, yeah, I would hope it is, considering Xbox isn't doing a mid-gen refresh, and if you compare the Series X and PS5, the Series X is only a little bit more powerful than the PlayStation 5. So hopefully, if PlayStation is making a whole new SKU, like a brand new console, that they can release at the end of 2024, that thing would be much more powerful than all of the competition, because that would give us a reason to upgrade to it. The interesting thing here is that it feels like with that 50% increase, it's just enough where it's going to be something we notice on the screen, like with how games are running and looking, but it will give them headroom to actually evolve that standard going forward for things like the PlayStation 6, which is allegedly going to come out in 2028. This video is sponsored by War Thunder, one of the most comprehensive vehicle combat games ever made. The vehicle details are gonna amaze you as you immerse yourself in the combat experience, where you can choose from over 2,000 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships to claim the win in PvP battle. And you can play it on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation right now, which is awesome. These vehicles are realistic for the best tactical experience and intense PvP battles at all levels. You'll find vehicles spanning over 100 years in War Thunder. You'll be able to apply hundreds of camouflages and historical markings. The graphics are amazing in this game, and they're detailed in 4K resolution with an authentic sound effects suite that's gonna blow you away. The battles between ships, planes, and tanks will leave you in awe as you try to outgun and outmaneuver your opponents. There is no extra pilot hardware necessary either, thanks to the intuitive mouse aim mode, making the air warfare experience unbelievable. All new players or those who haven't played for more than 6 months can claim a large bonus pack. It has multiple premium vehicles, a premium account, and an exclusive 3D vehicle decorator. It has a whole bunch more, and you can claim it by using my link down in the description. Click the link in the description to download War Thunder today for your PC, PlayStation, or Xbox. And if you think about it, this is the perfect time for something like the PlayStation 5 Pro to release, because we're right in the middle of the generation. The PS5 came out in 2020, the PS6 is allegedly coming out in 2028. That's an 8-year cycle of the console, which in my opinion is the perfect amount of time to have something like this, especially considering the current PS5 is strong enough to, I think, at least get us to the end of this generation or close to it. Whereas if you compare it to the PS4 generation, the launch PS4 was nowhere near good enough to get us to the end of that generation. And now you're seeing the effects of that with games coming out and not really running all that well on it compared to the PS5 counterpart. So not only is the timing good for the PS5 Pro to release, but it's also a good time right now for games to start moving on from the PlayStation 4 and use PS5 as their base SKU, which thankfully, as bad as the Game Awards were this year, we did learn that a lot of games games are skipping PS4 in the future, which is great, like Monster Hunter Wilds, for example. I saw a lot of headlines also talking about how the RAM is going to increase in speed on this console, and honestly, it looks like it's about the same to me. Like they're both getting 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 RAM, and I don't know. I have a lot of PCs. I've built a lot of PCs over my lifetime. The one thing I don't really ever notice is RAM speed increasing. Another upgrade we're getting with the PS5 Pro over the PS5 regular, I don't know what to call it, the PS5, just regular PS5, right? Is that instead of using RDNA 2 technology, the PS5 Pro is going to use RDNA 3 technology from AMD, but it's also going to downscale some features from RDNA 4, which is good. It all has to do with ray tracing and how the console handles stuff like that, which is good that they're making an improvement there, because I feel like we got like ray tracing mentions with the launch of the PS5, but a lot of people who play on PC understood immediately that you're not really going to get a lot of games that are actually performing well with ray tracing, because while it's advertised as this great hardware level feature and has been going back to like the 20 series of graphics cards, the performance level you need to get 60 FPS out of ray tracing is insane and honestly might not exist running the game natively. Like you need DLSS, you need path tracing, you need all of these different super sampling and upscaling technologies to actually be able to ray trace. So knowing that, expecting that out of a $500 console back in 2020 wasn't really realistic unless you were running games at low resolutions and 30 FPS and using FSR. So having better technology is always good. I'm still a little skeptical if we're going to look at higher resolutions and higher frame rates with ray tracing, but it is nice to know that they're still advancing that technology, because personally, I need to be sold on it still. I see these videos where you compare left and right. It's like RTX off, RTX on. I never really can see the difference all that well, except for a few different games. It was cool having it always on in Spider-Man. I think that was a bigger technological leap than we give Insomniac credit for. And on, of course, the Xbox side, you have games like Forza, but I think that's a little less demanding. So that's a top level examination of all the hardware specs. Again, super light. I'm sure Digital Foundry will have a video where they go super deep into it in due time. And as for where all these leaks are coming from, the rumor from Tom Henderson that we did get is that dev kits for the PlayStation 5 Pro, they're not only already at first party studios like Naughty Dog, Sucker Punch, all these other big studios that Sony owns, they're going to be going out to other third and second party developers by the end of the year, which is good because that's when everything leaks. I'll never forget how we got the leak of the PlayStation 5. I think it was Kojima Productions who posted a dev team video like way back in the day, and sitting behind someone on a desk was what looked like a VCR or a sideways computer, and it had a V-shaped fan vent on the top of it. And people were like, is the V5 for PlayStation 5? And then when dev kits started going out to true third-party developers, someone just tweeted out their dev kit of the PlayStation 5, and that was it. One of them even showed up on eBay at one point. And yeah, so these things leak once the dev kits get to developers. So especially when you're in the mid-generation, they're a little bit looser with leaks and everything like that. I would expect to start seeing not only specs, but maybe even a picture of what this thing looks like. And the cool part is when you're talking about a mid-gen refresh, unlike the original PS5, I'm thinking the PS5 Pro very well could have a chassis that looks like what the retail unit will be. We had this with the Vita, for example. The dev kit for the Vita was a black Vita that had HDMI ports and other ports on the top of it. It looked awesome. So yeah, I hope we get a picture of the PS5 Pro as soon as it's in developers' hands. I think we will. I think the leaks are going to be pretty good on this one. Anyway, the sort of code word they're using for this console is Trinity, and that's because of the three technologies that are all combining to make it a big upgrade over the current PlayStation 5. The first one of those is fast storage, the next one is next-gen upscaling, and then of course hardware accelerated ray tracing. So it really is going to be the true next-gen machine of next-gen machines. As far as the fast storage goes, I really want to know what's going to be different there, right? Like we talked about the RAM, having faster RAM is good, but if they're upgrading the SSD that's soldered onto the motherboard, I don't really know what that's going to improve outside of the things that already were improved on this console, which is good, right? Like you get faster loading times. You can have bigger open worlds that load in new areas much faster, because the one immersion breaking thing that we have still seen this generation, I want to say, is things like pop-in when you're loading in a new area, specifically in games like Alan Wake 2 and Dead Space. When you load in a new area, you get frame drops as things load in, and the only thing that's going to help that is a faster CPU and faster storage. They both have to work work in tandem with each other to load in these new assets. So if Sony's working on fast storage, that leads me to believe that Sony's focus here is making games load faster and without frame drops or other stutters. And if this is the case, just like with the PS4 Pro, you'll be able to take an original PS5 game that had pop-in and loading issues like Dead Space or Alan Wake 2, put that disc in your console for Dead Space because Alan Wake 2 is digital only, and those issues might be mitigated in the PS5 Pro mode. Just like we had all these awesome games that were upscaled and ran better just by flicking on the Pro mode in the PS4 Pro. Like a lot of games didn't even need a patch to run better on that console. So I'm hoping we get a very similar scenario with this new PS5 Pro. The next pillar of hardware accelerated ray tracing, that's cool. I like that. Again, I need to be shown that it's something I should care about because I'm someone who plays on PC and PS5. I was really happy with the beginning of this generation, specifically with games like God of War Ragnarok, for example, that could run at a flawless locked 60 FPS, and it was absolutely phenomenal. Of course, when you start introducing ray tracing, the thing that goes out the window immediately is the 60 FPS mode. So I would really like the PlayStation 5 Pro to not only make a pillar of its like technological standard, having hardware accelerated ray tracing, but also be able to keep that 60 FPS lock. Of course, for a console that's going to sit in the $500 to $600 range like the PS5 Pro, to make that ray tracing with higher FPS possible, you're going to need good upscaling, which seems to be the third pillar of PlayStation 5 Pro's Trinity approach. So this is a really interesting thing because right now, because the PS5 and Xbox Series X use AMD APUs, a lot of games that are coming out take advantage of FSR, which is AMD's version of DLSS. Now, if you look at them on paper, like screenshot to screenshot, DLSS blows FSR out of the water. Whether it's FSR 1, 2, or 3, DLSS has always been massively ahead. And the reasoning for that seems to be that DLSS is proprietary to NVIDIA cards. So if you have an NVIDIA card, you can use DLSS, and they even segment it even more, where newer features like frame generation, which I'll talk about in a minute, are only locked to the 40 series of cards, whereas like older versions can't even take advantage of that because they build in specific hardware level things that allow these cards to take advantage of these features. FSR from AMD, it works on everything. So if you have an Intel card, NVIDIA card, or an AMD card, you're going to be able to use FSR. And in a lot of cases, it's what games launch with just because there's like exclusive deals AMD does. And it's super frustrating because they just do straight upscaling. They smooth it out a little bit. But when you look at it compared to DLSS, especially when you have an NVIDIA card that you shelled out a ton of money for, playing a game like Starfield with FSR really sucks because on top of the visual enhancement you get from DLSS, you also get performance enhancement. So now that you know kind of what DLSS and FSR are, we've seen FSR used a lot this generation in games on the PlayStation 5. Alan Wake 2 is a great example. Once again, I'm going to keep talking about it because I just finished it. I'm in New Game Plus. I love it. It's upscaling from 720p to run at 60 FPS on the like lowest of low settings, and it looks still pretty good because Remedy likes to push the boundaries on graphics. But yeah, you get shimmering, you get ghosting, you get weird hair degradation, and just bad effects smoothing that they've done a good job of patching, but it doesn't look anywhere as good as when I'm playing on my PC using DLSS 3.0, not even with frame generation. And frame generation is the biggest new feature that's coming with FSR 3. And if you don't know what that is, basically it doubles your frame rate by inserting a frame that's AI generated in between the actual frames. So if you were dropping a few frames here or there, it would be a lot smoother because they'd have an AI generated frame ready to go. But if you put in a shitty frame rate to begin with, like you're running the game maxed out, it's running at 20 FPS, you're only going to get 40 FPS outputted and it's going to look really bad. So frame generation, while cool, I don't really see the benefit of it. I have a 4090 and I never use it. Like I used it one time in Diablo and turned it off because it looks so jelly-like. So taking all of that into consideration, you could see why Sony this time around would want to use their own temporal upscaler, and that's exactly what they did with the PlayStation 4 Pro, right? Like when they were advertising 4K gaming with that thing, it wasn't true 4K. It was running the games internally at a higher resolution like 1080p, maybe even 1440p, and then they would use checkerboard upscaling to make it look better at 4K. And it looks like they're developing a similar but more improved technology for the PS5 Pro, and the goal there is to tie into hardware level ray tracing so that they can run these games at 4K at higher settings and also output them at 60 FPS or close to it. So if the ultimate goal with this console is to get games not only running at 60 FPS but at 4K and still look really good, I am a day one buyer because I I hate this point in a console generation where at the beginning, it seems like consoles kind of outclassing PC. Games are running at 60, like with Dead Space, it ran the best on PlayStation 5. Alan Wake 2, for example, runs the best on Xbox Series X. You get loading stutters on PC. And now we're kind of getting to that point where PC is pulling ahead just a little bit, and I like that Sony is keeping up with the trend here and releasing a console with the higher class features that come along with next generation games. So yeah, I'm curious, are you excited for the PlayStation 5 Pro? Let me know down in the comments below, and remember to subscribe and set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on. Huge shout out once again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Click the link in the description to grab your bonus pack and immerse yourself into the battle.